published by a climate-focused NGO, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. The NGO is called Power Shift Africa.
Hello, my great and wonderful people. We welcome you once again to our today's episode of this program. And today we get some videos and messages for our team. We're going to be saying one quickly the review to you concerning the things we're going to be saying if they happen right now for inside this country, Nigeria. Just as we start to give an update since yesterday concerning the way we're going to be saying this protest the waka. Now, the new updates going to be say they reach our table now. Now, they were going to be say talks from nowhere. They come outside to go attack these people. Going to be say that they enforce this strike, most especially for Jos Plateau. Yes, and this very one talks a breaking talks attack NLC, which is Nigeria Labour Congress officials, where it be say it they enforce strike for Jos Plateau. All right. The question when you be say you they ask yourself now when you be say I'm Bola Tinubu and the own people don't try all their possible ways to make sure say they put an end to this strike and it no work. Now they believe say now talks now it will be the next line in action. All right, if you doubt us, no problem. Maybe we'll do small reading from inside this very one so that if we understand the direction of this whole matter. And as we put our hand there for inside this matter, they can make us understand, say, hoodlums, which is in another word, agbero, don't attack some members of the Nigeria Labour Congress, which is NLC, where it basically they enforce the ongoing indefinite strike for just when it be the Plateau State capital. And still on top of the matter, they come make us understand, say, a news media, when they say that they call News Directs, reports, say, the NLC and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, shut down the country's economy on Monday over the federal government's inability to accept their own proposal when it be 494,000 naira minimum wage. And as we put our hand deep again, they come make us understand, say, why it be said that they enforce this strike for Jos, which is the members of NLC. Tons of a private company transport, they report say they attack some members of the NLC when it be say it eventually land each and every one of them for hospital. And still on top of the matter, they come make us understand, say, during the time when we say that they address newsmen, the vice chairman of the NSC, when he equally mean Nigeria Labour Congress for Plateau, when he named na Sunday Ayodele, explains, say, immediately, this very talk so, see them for park, say that they come for the gates, they start to they hurry, they stone them. They think, say, they be members of the NURTW. And again, they come make us understand, say, unknown to us, say, problem don't already dey for ground between the private transport company and NRTUW for Jos and the towns of the park. Simply they descend on us and our members before we understand the reason for the attack. The towns they injure 4 members of the NLC. All right, my great and wonderful people. Now, only this one fit take from this very message. You know, the reason why say we try to reach this very news to this very extent, now for us to understand whether we fit find out the reason for this attack. You know, before we start to accuse anybody, we will try as much as possible to find out the reason. Now, we don't understand, say, they're not intentionally just focus on this very protester or because of say that they protest for their minimum wage. So problem don't already dey for ground between this very private company and the NURTW. Yes. Now those one na be the error when they say don't dey for ground, which is in another word, these people, Nigeria Labour Congress member, just can use their body rub the error when they say it don't already dey for ground. Now it cause this very whole issue. Tinubu no get any hand for this very attack, or maybe his own members for Abuja or the Nigeria police. I believe that one is very clear. All right, my great and wonderful people, I will leave you to share your own opinion concerning that one with us for the comment section, even as we take you down to this other video. And this video and video going to be said with the receive from one of the Nigeria outstanding human rights activists when it be said in name na David Hundeyin. When it take come outside to throw some light concerning some reports when be say they come up, not be only for Nigeria, even the one when be say it also draw the attention of the Africa. I beg, listen to this very message. I believe say yes, it worth to listen to, and it take a little time, a little bit, but pay attention. You will understand the reason why they say with the advice like this. We'll come back for more.
Published by a climate-focused NGO, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. The NGO is called Power Shift Africa. And the report was called Still Banking on Fossil Fuels. And it was basically a report criticizing the African Development Bank for funding projects that involve the use of fossil fuels in Africa. Apparently, if it's not renewable energy, then the African Development Bank should not be funding it because fossil fuels are bad. Now, I'm going to read out a segment from the sort of executive summary of the report because this is going to serve as the backdrop for what I want to talk about today. So it says, Africa stands at a crossroads in its development. There are two possible futures for the continent and its people. One where the governments pursue the fossil fuel development pathway that the global north followed, or a different pathway where Africa leapfrogs fossil fuels toward a thriving economy built around energy sovereignty, industrialization, and protection of the natural environment. This second path is currently uncharted. So I'm going to stop there. Now, I want you to go back to what was said a few seconds ago. It said, one where governments pursue the fossil fuel development pathway that the global north followed. That's the first option. In other words, the countries that are currently rich and wealthy on the surface of the planet, this is what they did. And then on the other hand, this is what this research paper or this paper is recommending, this different pathway. It says a pathway that leapfrogs fossil fuels toward a thriving economy, blah, 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 blah. And then the last sentence, this second path is currently uncharted. And if you know what that means in plain English, it means this current path doesn't fucking exist. And that's why I thought this was a useful entry point into what I want to talk about today. Because what I want to discuss today is the malign role that foreign-funded NGOs and civil society organizations are currently playing on the African continent and why this thing is an existential threat to us. It's a real danger. It's more than just an occasional irritation or something to sort of laugh off. It's a real existential danger that is setting all of us up actively. Now, I did some looking into this Power Shift Africa. Like, who is behind this thing and why is the African Development Bank's funding of energy projects such a problem all of a sudden? I think it should be common knowledge that the national wealth of a country or an economy is directly linked and directly proportional to the amount of energy generated. In other words, the more power you generate in your country, the wealthier your country is. The less power you generate and consume, the poorer your country is. Very simple. Everybody knows this or should know this. So if the African Development Bank is funding power projects that raise the amount of power generated and consumed on the African continent, that is quite literally the African Development Bank funding the economic growth and development of Africa, which is something that we should all want, right? And yet here is a CSO based in Africa, based in Nairobi, ostensibly staffed by Africans, running a whole campaign going after the African Development Bank for doing this. So I wanted to know who is behind this thing. And I did some checking, and as you can see on your screen in front of you, this is what I found. So apparently this organization is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That already tells quite a story on its own. $1.something million of funding to apparently tell the continent's premier investment institution that it has no business trying to make Africa less poor or trying to build wealth in Africa's economy or trying to build heat and traction in the African economy. That instead of doing what everybody else did to escape poverty, instead of doing what everyone else did to get their economy to the velocity needed with which to escape poverty. Instead of doing that, what you need to do is this second path, which is currently uncharted. In other words, instead of doing what you need to do to stop Africans from being poor and to build wealth in Africa, what you need to do is keep Africans exactly where they are, as God surely intended. The second anecdote that I wanted to use as an entry point into this conversation was, well, this is not it's not a single anecdote, it's like three anecdotes in one, so please bear with me. So I'll start with the first. They all involve the same person. So the first, I wasn't there. It was a meeting that was held sometime in 2021, I believe, early 2021 or late 2020. I think it was early 2021. It was a meeting that was held in Nigeria, in Abuja, and it was a meeting involving some of the prominent female civil society leaders in Nigeria. Now, this was in the aftermath of the NSAS protest movement, and there was a conversation potentially about identifying young female leaders who were identified during the protest and sort of promoting them with the hope of someday maybe giving them the platform to run for political office, that kind of thing. Female participation in politics, yada, 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 right? Nothing wrong with that. Perfectly fine. Now, I wasn't at the meeting, but a couple of people who were at the meeting filled me in on what happened at this meeting. Apparently, this character, who I shall not name, made the decision that this particular group of people, they're not making a cut. We're not selecting them. These people, maybe they're a bit older, they're a bit worldly wise, they have minds of their own. They could become a problem for us. We don't want them. But this person, we want this person. Yeah, this one is a bit younger. This one is more impressionable. This is the kind of person we want to potentially become a global leader someday, representing a female constituency in Nigeria. And that person was pushed forward, right? Again, nothing wrong with that. Perfectly fine. Now, a few months to the 2023 election, February 2023 to be exact, this same person, this civil society individual, was quoted in a Bloomberg article where in the aftermath of the multiple polls that showed that Peter Obi was going to win the 2023 presidential election. And obviously, as you may or may not know, the Western establishment was not at all on board with the idea of a Peter Obi presidency for two major reasons. First of all, the candidate of the incumbent party, that is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as is well known, is someone that the US law enforcement and intelligence community has direct control over because, for lack of a better term, he's a criminal, right? He used to be a heroin dealer in Chicago. He has a 2,500-page FBI file, which I'm currently in court with the FBI trying to get them to unredact his name, right? So he is basically Nigeria's Manchurian candidate. So there was a possibility of them getting a candidate in who was going to become Nigeria's president, who was going to be under their direct control, versus Peter Obi, who is very much his own man. And then there was the added problem of Peter Obi having, on multiple occasions, expressed admiration for the industrialization route taken by China, right? If you're familiar with Nigerian politics, you know that one of the biggest sins that the former President Goodluck Jonathan committed was aligning Nigeria's development trajectory with China, because there's a huge geopolitical tussle going on between the US on the one hand and China on the other hand. And Nigeria happened to get caught in the middle. So for that and many other reasons, Peter Obi was not at all favored by the US and Western establishments to become Nigeria's president in 2023. Now, in the lead up to this election, when all the credible polls showed that this was going to be a blowout for Peter Obi and the establishment candidate was not going to win if this was a free and fair election, something needed to be done to sort of start changing the narrative, to start astroturfing the narrative, because that's one of the key things that happens during any sort of fraught political process where an outcome that isn't honest is being planned. The narrative surrounding this event needs to be sort of curated in a way that makes it seem as if this planned dishonest outcome was actually plausible in some way. It's called astroturfing. So this lady granted an interview where she was quoted saying something to the effect of, if Peter Obi loses this election, that his base of young urban supporters will need therapy. That might sound like just a throwaway comment. That was not a throwaway comment. Because what that comment was doing was setting up a scenario where, from hearing about how this guy is winning all the polls, is going to win the election, for the first time, you're now hearing about how there's a possibility that he might lose, first of all. And then more importantly, you're getting a mental picture of what his supposed support base is supposed to look like, right? So she's saying that his support base is overwhelmingly young and urban. So what she has said without saying it is that he had the support of a noisy minority. That's pretty much what she said, right? That is a very understated way of trying to lay the groundwork for something. And when eventually the supposed result that was announced had it that supposedly Bola Tinubu won the election, we know exactly how that went. Now, the funny thing is, earlier this year, I found myself in a Zoom meeting with this same civil society person and a few others. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss what happens now. It seems as if Nigeria doesn't have any sort of viable opposition at the moment. And it seems as if this government is getting away with absolutely anything. There needs to be some sort of organized pushback onto it. And I remember looking at the attendees at this meeting, and I was just seeing like civil society, because I know all these names. This person works with this one, this person founded this one, this person is funded by that one, and it's just civil society. Every single person on the call, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 of us, of maybe 10 people on the call, were all foreign funded within the civil society space. I'm going to get to why that is a problem in a second, but now the third scenario, this goes back all the way to 2015. Now, this same person, she didn't know who I was then, but I knew who she was. Back in 2015, I attended a concert. It was in Oregon, in Ikeja, Lagos. I remember it was a Two-Face concert. And this was just after midnight. So Two-Face was on stage. And apparently this, I don't want to say the name of the CSO that this person, runs, because it will be like, identifying her. I don't want to make this a conversation about a personality, because there's a point I'm driving at. But in the middle of the performance, this CSO, which was apparently sponsoring the show, made Two-Face stop his song, stop the performance, and then went on stage and then did a whole thing, a whole show surrounding this Bring Back Our Girls thing, which was happening at the time. Bear in mind, this was a music concert. Right? This had nothing to do with Bring Back Our Girls or whatever. It was a music concert, and apparently the purpose of this CSO sponsoring the concert was to drive youth interest and participation in the upcoming elections, right? So if that is the purpose of the show, to drive youth participation in an upcoming election, which was 2 or 3 months in the future, what was Bring Back Our Girls doing in that scenario? And why was that CSO behind it? What was the connection between Bring Back Our Girls and getting youths to take part in an election? The link was clear and obvious. Someone was trying to make the link that this current government is responsible for this thing, so go and vote. In other words, vote against this current government. That's what it was, right? It was an expressly political campaign that was couched in the euphemism of youth participation and engagement. We know how that goes. Why is this important? Now, let me go back to the first scenario that I discussed, the guy in Nairobi. Now, the person behind this Power Shift Africa apparently is a guy called Mohammed Ado. I don't know how his name is pronounced. And by all accounts, he's done very well for himself. You can see the amount of funding that he's been able to get from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And you should, on your screen now, you should be seeing what the office building where Power Shift Africa is based looks like. This is in Kilimani, one of the best upmarket districts of Nairobi. Very expensive place. I've spent some time in Kilimani. I used to rent an apartment there. It's a lovely place if you can afford it. But I mean, with donor money, there are not many things you can't afford, I'm guessing. Now, here's the problem. In a world where currently Africa is at the bottom of the global totem pole, and as I mentioned earlier, your economic output is directly linked to the amount of energy you generate. Why is a CSO purportedly working for the betterment of Africa, which is funded by American money, campaigning for Africa to not produce energy? Why is CSO effectively campaigning for Africa to remain exactly where it is? Why is it doing that? In a world where it's widely accepted that the quality of leadership, political leadership you have, will be directly proportional to the quality of policy and economic decisions that are taken, which have a direct impact on the lives of your citizens. Why is a CSO, also funded by American money, campaigning the 2015 instance for an illiterate who tanked the economy 3 back-to-back recessions, and in the second instance, for a drug dealer who is essentially an extension of the US State Department? Why is that? Why are these two prominent CSOs, one in Nairobi, one in Lagos or Abuja, why are these two CSOs, both purportedly run by indigenous Africans but funded from the US, why are they campaigning for things which are in direct conflict with Africa's own stated interests? Why?
All right, my great and wonderful people, I believe you take your time to digest that very word and segment from David Hundehim. All right, we not really get much to add to that very one. I believe it don't explain everything by itself. I will leave you to do the rest for us for the comment section, even as we draw the line of this very broadcast here. And before we say final goodbye, I want to quickly use this medium to appreciate each and every one of you for your time when you stay with us up to this very moment. God Almighty will bless you. And equally, that we're going to be sitting help or to share this broadcast, your likes, your comments, all of them, we appreciate them. I beg not forget to appreciate this very one so that we still reach our brothers and sisters all around the world, because we believe in one thing, say information, now power. And as we do so, God Almighty will bless you. We would like to draw the conclusion of this program here. We will see you again when we see you. Remember, we love you all. Bye-bye.